rise of the same old game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious? Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for July 14th, 2026, and I'm Jada Duran.
And I'm Megan Kearns.
And I'm Samuel Duran.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, for what should be a really fun conversation on the movie event of the summer. Christopher Nolan is back with a new film. It is The Odyssey, Homer's epic, of course. I am really excited to dig into this one. Sam is here to join us, at least for a little bit here up at the top. I do want to say a big thank you to everyone who has left comments either on YouTube or on Spotify or anyone that's reached out regarding Sam being here on the show. We've had some really fun, positive comments, and I really do appreciate those that are reaching out. I hope everyone is enjoying Sam's thoughts as he dives into these movies with us. And it's interesting because we've graduated from just doing animated and kids movies to now Backrooms, which he did earlier in the year. Yes. And now he's here for The Odyssey. He texted me earlier in the week out of the blue. I had no idea he was going to do this, that he wanted to watch Interstellar. He's like, Dad, I'm going to watch Interstellar today. And I said, okay, let me know what you think. And I came home and he was watching Interstellar. And you enjoyed the film, right?
Yep, I loved it.
He really loved it a lot. Has been listening to the score ever since.
Yep.
That's how I know he's mine.
Nice.
The score is good.
It's very good. So that was exciting. And he let me know some weeks ago that he was very amped up for The Odyssey. He was ready to watch this movie. Of course, they had the press screening last night. So we are now able to get this review out early, which we typically aren't able to. But since Sam was able to go to the press screening with me, it is exciting that we're here a little bit early. And I guess to kind of kick things off here, I mean, we've talked a lot about Christopher Nolan in the past. We just had a top 5 Nolan scenes on the main show this last week. If anyone wants to go and check that out, we've talked Nolan rankings before. We've, of course, reviewed many of his films that have came out over the last 12 years in real time, let alone retrospective reviews. Our thoughts on Nolan are very much out there, but for any new listeners, anyone that might be tuning in here, the TLDR on it, for me anyway, is that I'm a big fan. I really love Christopher Nolan. I love the way he's able to create these spectacle movies, these big bombastic movies, doing it in a way that very few filmmakers are able to do these days. And it's certainly evident in something like The Odyssey, as we'll talk about. But I'm a big fan. There's only one movie of his that I don't really like. That's The Dark Knight Rises. The rest of them are varying degrees of good to great to excellent, with Oppenheimer being a masterpiece that I think is arguably the best film of the decade so far. So that's where I stand on it. Megan, do you have any TLDR thoughts you want to throw out there real fast?
I agree with everything you're saying. If I put my own spin on the TLDR, I would just say that I'm always interested to see what Christopher Nolan is going to do. And for very similar reasons, because he is such a technical craftsman and clearly a huge cinephile and lover of cinema. And I love that he does make these large scale, big budget spectacles while still being incredibly meticulous, thoughtful, cerebral.
Yes.
And so even if some of the films in his filmography are somewhat less successful for me personally, I still respect them incredibly, and I'm still always drawn to them and intrigued by what he does
Yeah.
and what his vision is. So I think he's a very fascinating filmmaker. So I feel
I
very
agree.
similarly to you.
I agree. I mean, even on the films that I don't know if I have a pulse on, I joked about this on the main show this last week, but something like Tenet, for example, do I have my head wrapped around that? Not really. Am I fascinated by it? 100%.
Yep.
Or I've talked about Interstellar a bajillion times on this show. Like, there are elements of that film that it's simply some of the best filmmaking ever made. 100%. But there are a few things, particularly the ending, that I very much wrestle with in a heavy way. So, yeah, I mean, even when I don't fully go for it, there is something about that fusion of grand spectacle and thought-provoking emotion, or the thematic underbelly of his films, his obsession with time and the inner turmoil of his central characters. I am endlessly compelled by all of that. I think he is able to bring all of that together in such a unique and singular way. So I do really love him. As for Sam, this is just your second Nolan film, with Interstellar being the first earlier in the week.
Amazing.
But he has noted to me he wants to see the rest of them. So we've already contemplated putting a plan together for Inception and the Dark Knight movies, of course. And what was the other one that you wanted to see? Dunkirk was the other one. Yes, of course.
Oh, that's my favorite. That's such a
Yes.
so
So we will likely go on a Nolan binge here in the next couple of weeks.
It's amazing.
Throughout this summer. So I'm very excited to bring Sam's thoughts on the rest of these as we get to it. All right. With all of that laid out, unless there's any other table segment you guys want to get to, are we ready to dive into the Odyssey?
Yep.
All right. Let's dig into this. The Odyssey is written and directed by Christopher Nolan. And, you know, I could sit here and say it stars, but maybe it would be faster to say who it doesn't star. Because it's basically all of Hollywood. But a few include Matt Damon and Tom Holland and Anne Hathaway and Robert Pattinson and Lupita Nyong'o and Samantha Morton, Zendaya. Charlize Theron, of course, is in the film. Who else? John Leguizamo, I should bring up. John Bernthal, Bill Irwin, Himesh Patel, Corey Hawkins, Mia Goth. I'm just going to name them all anyway. Logan Marshall Green, Travis Scott, Elliot Page. And the list goes on and on and on. If you are not familiar with the Odyssey, and let's be honest, we are all familiar with the Odyssey in one way or another. But just in case, after the Trojan War, Odysseus faces a dangerous voyage back to Ithaca, meeting creatures like the Cyclops, Sirens, and Calypso along the way. All right, as we typically do, we're going to start here with Sam's thoughts. We'll have him talk about the movie and his experience, and then we'll say goodbye to Sam, and Megan and I will get into our thoughts on the film. So, Sam.
Yep.
What did you think about the Odyssey, my friend?
I loved it. It was good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It was good?
Yeah.
All right. What did you really like about it?
The main thing that I really liked about it is that I love like all the scenes. They take a lot of background editors, the actors, my bad.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because there's like hundreds of those.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
like during the action scenes and
yes,
stuff?
especially during the action scenes.
Yeah.
A lot of those.
So you like the action scenes
Yes,
and the spectacle?
action scenes. I loved everything about it.
Yeah. Did you
Even the
have a
side
favorite action scene?
Probably either the Battle of Troy or when they were with the Cyclops.
Yeah. Two very good scenes that
Yeah.
we will for sure talk about. Yes. So those were really fun. What else did you like about the movie?
I liked how it doesn't say anything about this, but I don't know if you guys know, but everything was practical. The Cyclops was an animatronic.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't CGI, which makes it really cool because the Cyclops is super big.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of time
Yeah.
to just build it.
You know, I wouldn't have been surprised if Nolan genuinely looked for a 60-foot Cyclops to play that role and couldn't find one, so decided, since one doesn't exist, let's do the animatronic instead. Because of course he would.
Naturally.
Nah, yeah. But yes, the filmmaking, they're on real water. That's exciting.
Yes.
I can't imagine the jarring experience it would be watching the live action, quote unquote, wink, wink, the live action Moana and then going to see this.
Oh my
Could you imagine how jarring of an experience that would be?
Emotional whiplash.
Visual
Wow.
whiplash.
Visual whiplash, yes.
Yes, in the Odyssey, real boats, real water. It's
Imagine
tangible.
that.
You can see, you can feel, you can almost smell the salt
Yeah.
in the air.
I have to
smelled
say-
the salt in the movie theater.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I saw that, I was like, we're so back. Movies are so back.
So back. Yes. Real beaches, it turns
Yes.
out. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Amazing. But yeah, to your point, Sam, and that's Nolan, right? That's what we love about him. He brings that tangible craftsmanship to his movies. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, what else stands out to you about the Odyssey?
The sound, the score.
The sound, the
It's
score.
great.
Yep.
The score is great. I loved it.
Yep. Ludwig Göransson working with Nolan once again. A very different score than something like Oppenheimer. It simmers in the background, but it's also quite
Interstellar.
varied. I love the different types of music he brings to the score. It's not singular by any stretch of the imagination, which is also quite unique. Yeah. Really like the score, the sound design.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else stand out to you, Sam?
Yes. I just want to say, because the end is crazy. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
But I can't because it's hard to create. Well, for me, it would be really hard to create death scenes. It
Yeah.
would be really hard because the part where he says you're Odysseus and then you know what happens, that would be really hard to do. I wonder. I just wonder how they do that. That's
Very
crazy.
good acting, great directing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They really make it immersive, I think
Yes.
is what you're trying
Yes.
to say.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very immersive. Yeah.
Yes.
And they bring the setting to life.
Yes.
Ithaca, the islands, the travel. Yeah.
Yeah. But and the sirens, the one that go past.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is that I don't know why that one guy took out the earwax or whatever it was.
He couldn't stand not knowing what it was. Curiosity got
Yeah.
the best of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Odysseus does become the first person to hear the sirens and live. He does.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yep.
the other guy does not.
Yes. That's very true. Yeah, that was a really interesting sequence as well.
Yeah.
A moment of even horror, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you want to talk about the ending a little bit more? I know you liked that sequence
Yeah.
and how that plays out.
The
There's a
ending's
bit of an action. There's a gimmick of sorts where they have to play this game, quote unquote. You liked how all of that played out.
Yes. Yeah.
Very satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, any other thoughts you want to lay out there before we
Yes.
let you go?
Yes.
Yeah. What else?
I wonder. What's the big mountain creature
The big mountain creature.
like after the whirlpool?
Oh,
yeah. We
Scylla.
were. Yeah.
So I wonder if that was CGI or if it was an animatronic.
They found a real kraken. Yes.
Real
No,
crap.
I don't know. That was probably CGI. That was the
Yeah.
one moment of the film.
'Cause I wouldn't think that would be
Yeah.
able to happen.
Yeah.
'Cause
That was probably CGI.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Nolan is dealing with a lot of
Yeah.
mythical elements. There's no way he was able to do all of this, practically speaking.
Yeah. It was on the water in the
Yeah.
whirlpool. They used a real whirlpool.
Mm-hmm.
They almost died. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that was a fascinating moment too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to note? You like the Trojan horse
Yes,
sequence? I
yes.
know we talked about that last
that
night.
one was good. I like that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is that I don't know why that one knight just stabbed his sword into the horse. Like, what was the purpose of that?
Yeah, that was
What is the purpose?
okay. So that was something that Sam brought up to me last night as well. It is admittedly a little weird because it's a gift to Athena. So you would think that it being a gift, they wouldn't be randomly sticking swords inside of the horse. It logically doesn't make a ton of sense, but Nolan needed some drama there because they're inside the belly of the beast, so to speak. And the one guy gets stabbed and they have to, pile on him to keep him quiet. And I think Nolan is just building some dramatic urgency there. I think that's the only reason that happens, but it is a bit contrived for sure. It is a bit weird.
Yeah. The Trojan horse scene is good when they sneak around. That part's good. I like that.
Yeah. Everything at night. We just don't see Achilles. Get that heel torn.
Yeah.
It's the only thing missing here.
Yep. No Achilles.
No Achilles, no Hector. All that's gone.
Not there.
Yeah.
But when they release, when the Spartans come into Troy, that scene is really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. And the one guy, the one like bigger Spartan, that guy was so cool.
Yeah, with the poster, the Spartan on the poster. Yeah.
Oh, isn't
I
that
forget that guy.
Agamemnon?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just call him like skeleton guy because he has like a little skeleton on the back.
It does look like a skeleton.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
That's also a good name. Skeleton guy.
I like that. That's actually cooler.
Yeah. All right. Well, any other final thoughts, and then we're gonna let you go, Sam.
I'll just say, I would give it an overall of 9.5.
9.5. That's a
Yeah.
high recommendation from Sam.
Really good.
The Odyssey. He
I'm-
loved it.
I'm depending. I don't know. It may become my favorite movie. I don't know yet.
Yeah, I was going to say he's been humble in this conversation. Every time we get on here, he tries to play it cool. And he does a very good job of playing it cool. But he's been pretty obsessed since we saw it. He hasn't stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
He was letting us know this morning that it was probably his favorite movie. He's been quite hyped for this movie. So don't let his toned down, cool aura appearance here fool you. He's pretty amped up for this. He's a big fan, and he very much recommends it.
Yes.
So 9.5. I'm surprised it's that low, to be honest.
Maybe 9.9.
9.9.
Ooh.
That feels more apt to how he's been acting lately,
Yeah.
or since last night. So,
Yeah, it was really good.
all right.
Now, I just got to read the book, though.
Yeah.
That's all I need to do.
A couple grades higher, and we'll get there. Yes. I don't think they're reading the Odyssey in 5th grade. Maybe they are. Who knows? I wasn't reading the Odyssey in 5th grade, but that was the 90s.
It's a different time then.
It's a different time. So who knows? All right. Well, thanks, Sam, for being here as always.
Yep, you're
Appreciate you. Say
Thanks,
goodbye to the
Sam.
people.
Goodbye, people. Goodbye, people of Troy.
All right. My thanks once again to Sam. Again, he really loved it. He's been way more enthusiastic than that all day. So it's really funny how he just comes out here and plays it cool.
He's a
I do love that.
professional. I love that.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. I should take note of that sometimes. But I wear my emotions way more in my sleeve than he does. I
Nothing
do
wrong
need
with
to take him up on that from time to time. All right, Megan, let's go ahead and get into this. What did you think about the Odyssey?
Okay, so I I thought this was incredible. I loved it. I was riveted for the entire 3 hours. I thought this was incredible. I already like the Odyssey as a story. I had to read it many moons ago.
Yeah, it's
and
been a long time.
yeah,
for me
it's
as
been a
well.
very
Yeah.
long time. But I love Greek mythology, and so I was very excited to see this. And I am in the midst of reading the book Circe by Madeline Miller, and I listened to the music from the musical Epic the Musical. That is incredible. That is an adaptation of the Odyssey. And so I was primed for this, and I love how this is brimming with, of course, spectacle, of course, expert craftsmanship in its direction and exquisite cinematography and the incredible score, as Sam already talked about. But it's also brimming with melancholy, and it is such a deconstruction of heroes, of hero worship, of myth making, of storytelling, and whose perspective is being told within stories, which I'm obsessed with. And I also love that it is an incredibly riveting eulogy on the passage of lost time, as well as grief, as well as hubris, and how that can be a person's downfall, and of regret. Like, I'm obsessed that it is dealing with all of these themes and these weighty issues while being a visual feast. It's great. I think the performances are great. All the elements are great. I think this is a spectacular film.
Yep, I am with you and Sam. I really like this a lot. I don't know if it's my favorite Nolan as of now, but there's so much going on in the Odyssey that it was inevitably going to end up a little messy. I know that might sound a little bit like an excuse, and I don't mean it to be. However, for context, as many of us already know, Homer's poem is over 12,000 words over the course of 24 books. There is just no way Nolan was going to be able to cover that amount of story in 3 hours. So I do think this film is a little bit ambitious to a fault. It is a little messy at times, but I do love how Nolan remedies that by doing the death of Robin Hood thing that we talked about some weeks ago, when you were just alluding to it there in your opening thoughts as well, where he uses stories to tell this epic story. Until we get to the final few sequences, everything we experience with Odysseus is told to us through other characters and what they've heard or what they've experienced, or even in the case of Odysseus himself, what he's trying to piece back together as Calypso has fogged his memory. I love that as a storytelling tool here, given that the poem itself is built on myth and folklore, and not just that, but from an archaeological perspective, we know that the poem was originally passed down orally. It wasn't written down until much later. So there's a meta quality to Nolan preserving that ethos here and using characters to vocalize the story of Odysseus. A brilliant tactic, I think. I do really love the screenplay here in that regard. And as if that's not enough, this is Nolan once again playing with time, his favorite theme. It comes back in a blistering way here, where this is all about defying the gods and losing your identity and becoming a victim to time, as Megan was talking about a moment ago. And I'm sure we'll talk more as we go here. But I do really love how that manifests in those final sequence. It's really, really poignant. The extensive cast that we noted is really good. John Leguizamo is the MVP for me. I was really, really moved by his tender performance. Elliot Page, a scene stealer at the midway point of this film. His moment with Odysseus is striking. And Samantha Morton, she might be a witch. She very well might be a witch. She is unreal here in her little moment as well.
She's my MVP for the film.
Yes, those three for me are my favorite, hands down. But I do think the cast, all in all, is quite good, as you might expect in a Nolan vehicle like this. It's imperfect, but I kind of like that about the film because it allows Nolan to use different tricks or tap into a storytelling vehicle that we haven't really seen from him before. And it's all done through that staggering spectacle that we've already noted that you would expect with Nolan. And to me, that's what cinema is all about. I mean, I think this, despite its imperfections, it absolutely delivers as a summer vehicle. And I couldn't recommend it enough in that regard. And I had a ball with this movie.
I'm so excited. Yeah, I love that we're already talking about our favorite performances because as one of the facets of how great this film is, because I agree with you. Samantha Morton, I think, she's giving such a pivotal role, and Cersei is a really complex character and I think a difficult character to really nail and to capture her thorniness as well as her rage against men and against injustice and misogyny. And I love that that's all working there on those levels, and so much of what she's doing is in her facial expressions and body language. I agree with you about John Leguizamo. He's amazing. I agree with you. Elliot Page is phenomenal. Someone we haven't talked about yet is Robert Pattinson, who is giving such an over-the-top performance. I couldn't
choose the
help
scenery,
but laugh. Yeah, he was the one that was making me laugh, and I don't know if it was intentional, but I didn't even care. Like the climactic scene towards the end, and he's like just shouting out weapons, and
it's so funny.
I was dying.
Absolutely. I think that is intentionally meant to be humorous, and he just nails it. Yeah.
He's going for it. It reminded me so much of his performance in Devil All the Time when he's like, delusions. And he's just like keyed into this, and I'm obsessed.
No one chews scenery better than he does.
God, I love him. I love him so much. He's such a great performer and chooses such interesting roles and does interesting things with them.
And kudos, real quick, to jump in there real fast, kudos to Nolan as well for allowing that. Because to your point, this is a pivotal moment in the film dramatically. It is an intense moment dramatically and emotionally, given the way it crystallizes. It brings all of these themes, this pent-up emotion, this idea of lost time. Nolan is crystallizing that with remarkable sincerity. And yet, in the middle of that, when we're having this major battle sequence, Pattinson is out of his mind hilarious. It is so funny. And so Nolan could have tried to rein that in or tell him to give a different performance that's more in tune to the dramatic urgency of the scene. But he allows that to happen, and it is a blast. It's a lot of fun.
I completely agree with you. And tonally, I feel like it almost shouldn't work, but yet it does brilliantly. But I love that each of these characters, because this is, as Sam mentioned, this is an enormous cast. Like this is wild. It is an unwieldy amount of actors and background actors that are in this film. But I feel every single character has a moment to shine, even if no matter how brief. And I feel like that is indicative of that, which I really love. And I love that Samantha Morton as Cersei has her moment. And I love that even Polyphemus, the Cyclops, has his moment. And I love that. And something I particularly love about that scene as well is, well, there are a few things. One, I love that Christopher Nolan was inspired by Guillermo del Toro.
Yes, I heard him say that.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes, as far as how to handle creatures, but also to humanize a monster, which I'm obsessed with because it is so clear that Odysseus is a jerk and is a jerk to Polyphemus. And Polyphemus is just living his life, tending to his sheep, making cheese, and here these, jagweeds come along and try to eat his food and whatnot. So I love those little moments. And I think it just speaks to how great this film is that amidst all of these large scale battles, amidst all of these, incredible vistas and this immense cast and this epic story, we're getting these moments of humanity. And I really, really love that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, because while we'll talk more about Odysseus and his perspective here, what I do love about Nolan and his storytelling here, especially circling it back to that mechanism of using story, like telling stories to tell stories, the meta qualities of this film, it's fascinating how that weaves itself into Nolan's philosophy regarding adaptation, because obviously he makes some pivotal changes here, and those changes I think are fascinating because it grounds these sequences in a way that gives credence to the thematic underbelly of what Nolan is trying to build toward as we crystallize that idea of lost time and becoming a victim of war at the end of the film. And by removing some of that mysticalness of it, I think it allows those themes to creep more to the surface in a visceral way. Of course, the Cersei moment is one of the greatest examples in the film. And also, going back to what I noted in my opening thoughts, because the film is so disjointed from a narrative perspective, and that's the introduction to Cersei that we get without any sort of exposition as to who this character is, which I do love that about the screenplay. It's all in Morton's performance. And I love that he just allows these performances to fill in those gaps.
Yes.
And for Morton to express that she's this witch and this goddess that has this pent-up rage regarding injustice. It's a little bit there in the screenplay. We do hear that exchange between her and Odysseus. So it comes out like it's there a little bit in the screenplay, but it's mostly in Morton's performance as to why the character would feel the way she does, coupled with other context that Nolan gives us throughout as to what his men have been up to while they're on this misadventure. The Cyclops moment is another big one. And I do love the change that we don't get the pun, because famously in the poem, there's that exchange where Odysseus tells him that his name is Nowhere. And I believe Nolan has noted in interviews he purposefully left that out because of like the language barrier and how puns don't always travel from one culture to the next. That makes sense as well, but primarily I love it because of exactly what you're talking about. That somewhat dumbs down the creature.
Yes.
And it might dehumanize him a little bit. But removing it and letting him essentially keep a humanity despite his exterior and his facade, he really does come off as this genuine sheep herder who drinks milk and loves cheese. Yeah. So in that sense, he's no different from you and I.
Nope.
He just happens to be this giant creature with one eye. But I love that Nolan removes the mystical element of him, lets it be more human, which gives more weight and emotion to what happens to him. And some of those close-ups or the way we see him lingering in the background, there is a pain there. There's a real pain that I think is necessary given what Nolan is trying to examine here as it relates to war and not just the devastating consequences of it, but specifically how that weighs on Odysseus specifically, which comes out in a huge way at the end of the film. So those changes, I think, are absolutely pivotal here.
I completely agree with you. And I mean, I feel like it stems, first of all, from the fact that one of the adaptations that he used was, or translations that he used was Emily Wilson's 2017 translation, which was very famous for being different than many of the other translations, which I think is great. And I think that that's great that that's one of the translations he used. But you're absolutely right. And I love those changes. And I do love that while the magical elements are there, they are much more realistic. They are much more grounded. And you're right. And instead it's focusing on these other themes. And it very much feels like a continuation of trauma from war and from the horrors of war that is in Dunkirk, that's in Oppenheimer, now it's here. Yeah. And I love that. And you get these moments that are, we talked before on the main show when we talked about our favorite Nolan scenes, and we talked about how Christopher Nolan wants to make a horror movie, and you're like, well, he kind of already did, with the scene from Oppenheimer. I would argue there are horror scenes here too. Whether it's Cersei's scene, whether there's some, a few other scenes that are horrifying that are kind of utilizing elements from the horror genre. But what I really love in the fusion of the storytelling device and what you've been talking about, as well as the traumas of war and PTSD, is I love how that kind of collides with when we have Menelaus, played by John Barenthal, talking to Telemachus. I always want to call him Telemachus. That's why it's like taking me a minute, because I'm like, that's not the way you pronounce it.
Up all these names.
Yes.
In this conversation.
I know, right? So Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, Odysseus' son. I love that when they're talking and he's asking about his father, Menelaus is talking about the Battle of Troy, and you get this kind of bravura, bombastic, kind of rah-rah, rousing account of it. And then you get Odysseus's account much later in the film, and it is a completely different account. And the tone is different. The visuals are slightly different. The score is completely different. And it is ominous. It is haunting. It is horrifying. And it's because Odysseus is haunted by these things. Yes. And he's, of course, haunted by the things he's done, by the things his men have done, the things he's witnessed, the destruction of humanity, the rise of cruelty, and all of these elements. And I think that all of this is colliding in this really, really brilliant way. And I just am completely fascinated by it and love it. It's great.
There are no winners in war. It's just death and suffering. That is the epiphany that he ultimately reaches. And in that way, I'm fascinated by how connected this film is to Oppenheimer.
Yes.
As we noted in our opening thoughts, time is once again a big factor here, as Odysseus goes off to war for a decade, and then he finds himself on these misadventures when trying to get back to Ithaca, which delays him further, to the point that by the time he does make it home, spoilers, I guess, for a 3,000-year-old epic.
I know, right?
But by the time he gets back, it's been nearly 20 years since he's last seen his wife and child. And what we come to find out is that after winning at Troy, Odysseus's isolation is self-inflicted, as Nolan focuses in on a man who, over the years, struggles to process with what he's unleashed onto the world, because it was his idea for the Trojan horse. This supposed gift to Athena and the people of Troy. To employ that kind of trickery, it goes against every code that he's lived by. And not only did it cause massive devastation and death in the city of Troy, but his defiance of the gods invited a mutiny of sorts, where a group of sea raiders began violating Zeus's law as they went around raping and pillaging, causing a deep fear over the region and essentially changing the culture completely. Something that, as we see in the end, Odysseus really, really struggles with, especially because he lost all of his men along the way. I guess more spoilers for a 3,000-year-old epic, but he loses his men along the way. and he's become tormented by their loss. So I do love how Odysseus is not too dissimilar to Robert Oppenheimer, and how both men lose their identity by becoming the most powerful versions of themselves, and time becoming the mechanism that triggers their most visceral regrets. The big difference here is that Nolan flips the coin in those final scenes when Odysseus overcomes his shame and chooses hope in life in the ways that we see there. And I do love how it does become a little bit of this yin and yang. But as far as companion pieces go, man, those two movies, absolutely captivating. Watching those back to back, I think, would be quite enlightening.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing the worst of men when we're supposed to, as a collective in society and in history, think that they're the best.
Yeah,
and
they
to
both achieve
revere
something
them.
great at the cost of themselves.
Exactly. And the cost of many people's lives too.
Yeah.
The amount
Yeah,
of
exactly.
devastation and destruction.
Massive devastation. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's a really interesting moment within the Odyssey that's kind of a microcosm of that, when you have Himesh Patel's character, one of Odysseus's crew, saying to Odysseus, you didn't tell us about the creature, talking about once they get through the whirlpool of Charybdis, then Scylla, the monster, is there. And Odysseus knew, but he kept that to himself. He didn't tell his crew. And Himesh Patel is outraged, and he's like, you should have told us. We could have known. And he's like, well, if I told you, then the ship wouldn't have made it, and then we all would have died. And
Yeah.
and they're both kind of right, but also Odysseus is dead wrong, of course. But it's this notion of that it's okay to sacrifice some people for the greater good. But then again, it's like, who's greater good, and who gets to decide that, and who's determining that? And I love that this film is in conversation with itself, as well as other films, as well as with history, as well as with myths and storytelling. It's just, it is so meta, and it's so incredible. Oh, I love it.
No, I completely agree. And I think what's so fascinating about that conflict is that Odysseus is fervent about getting his men home.
Yes.
That's why he makes those choices. He understands that some will not make it, but whoever he can get home, he's not willing to sacrifice everybody, despite what the gods are trying to tell him. And he is actively rebelling. So there is this interesting teeter-tottering here, I guess, as it relates to free will and fate.
Yes.
And him trying to perhaps remedy this deep guilt that he's feeling as a result of his choices, and creating this idea of the Trojan horse and the devastation that was caused, as we just talked about. And so I do love that tension here as far as him battling that internally. And that is ultimately the central nucleus of the film, I think, which I say that as if we don't know, if you haven't read the Odyssey. I mean, if you've read the Odyssey, you kind of know already, but I mean, obviously so much of it is rooted in this journey of not just getting across the sea to get home, but finding yourself in the process. Again, this idea that heroism isn't measured by fame or by conquest, but the ability to exercise wisdom over impulse, to remain as faithful as possible, and not just to your wife. And it's interesting how in this iteration or in this adaptation, Nolan does remove much of the infidelity that is in the poem.
Yes, he does.
And so Odysseus, he's more faithful here than in the poem. But even beyond that, again, feeling responsibility to your crew, to your men, and why that is important to Odysseus. So the emphasis here from Nolan is on the interior transformation. That's why I think he was perfect for this material, given his recurring interest in time and memory and identity, and obsession and the psychological cost of these experiences at the center of all of his movies, I do think it's easy to see how this material over conflict and loss, but done through this huge scope of Odysseus having all these experiences and coming across all these gods and creatures. Yes, I mean, that screams Christopher Nolan. And the spectacle of it is really great. But again, and we talked about this a little bit on the main show, or actually quite a bit on the main show this last weekend with our top 5 Nolan scenes. The gods and monsters serve a purpose here narratively, but it really is more about what each encounter reveals to Odysseus' struggle as he earns his way back home to family and his own identity. And Nolan takes time for us to experience both. We do have fun with this film from an action perspective or from a spectacle perspective, as we talked about with Crazy Ass Panton. But so much of this movie is also those quiet moments, those intimate moments, and Odysseus struggling with him becoming a person again. And yeah, I will always love that marriage with Nolan. This material was perfect for him.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that it's all of his characteristics and all of his trademarks on full display here. Something that you're talking about being a person again, I think that is really interesting in and of itself, but I also think it's interesting in how that plays out with how and why Odysseus wants to disguise himself as a beggar, and he wants to observe all of the suitors that are in his court and that are courting Penelope. And it's interesting that there's this idea of, will she still want him? And will she still, like, even though she's been loyal all these years, these 20 years, will she still want him because he's not the same person? And there is such a tragedy in that. It's so bittersweet. It's lovely that he's thinking that, and that he wants to be worthy of her and wants to have her choose. And yet it's so sad. It's so incredibly sad that that he's like a shell of himself.
Yeah, that exchange they have is one of my favorite sequences of the film.
It's a great one.
It perhaps lacks some ambiguity. It somewhat spells out the film's themes. But to your point, I really love the tender execution of it. Given Penelope's outburst earlier in the film and how adamant she is about Odysseus coming home, there's something about his grief there coupled with her torment that gives that scene a rigorous emotional conflict. And I love how it ends with, again, maybe slight spoilers here for a 3,000-year-old epic, but it does end with Penelope. And to be fair to Nolan, this is the one moment of the scene where he doesn't spell it out, as we see Penelope, without explicitly saying it, recognizing who she's talking to, setting up that final challenge, which I thought was pretty brilliant, and how he was able to thread, I was going to say thread that needle, but maybe I should say thread the axis. That makes a little bit more sense in this conversation. And it's incredible. And also, circling it back to what we were saying before about Odysseus and his grief and trauma, the visual trickery of it as well, with Athena and how she shows up there, I think is a nice visual contrast to him and Odysseus and having that moment with Penelope. I thought was really great. I really love the tender qualities of that moment.
I completely agree. I think it is a beautiful scene, and I love that. There are two things. One, I also love, and this scene made me weep. I love the scene with Argos the dog, and
oh yeah,
Argos,
I know.
Argos, sweet Argos. And I loved it. It made me cry and cry and cry. It was so good. And I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about it now. It's so good.
Yeah.
But what I was also going to say is that about Penelope, because one thing that Christopher Nolan has been, I think, rightly criticized for is his depiction of women in his films and how often they take a back seat. They are not as complex of characters as they could be in some of his films. And it's tricky here because this is a film about Odysseus. It's his crew are all men. And so it's harder to flesh out all of the characters, especially all of the women characters. But to his credit, I think, as I said before, I think a lot of the characters, if not all the characters, have their moments to shine, moments to show their agency, which I love. And I think with Penelope, what's really fascinating is that conversation she's having with her son, where they're arguing about, whether he should take the throne, whether she should marry, so on and so forth. And I love that she's talking about, I've been here. I've been ruling. My experience. For 20 years. My wisdom has guided us through things. And she's been underestimated clearly because she's a woman. But I love that. I love that she's saying that because that's so true. And I think that also is really fascinating and I think Christopher Nolan does a great job in visualizing this. She is behind a screen most of the time. She is shielded visually, and she has been in this moment of stasis for 2 decades, whereas at least with Odysseus, he's had this propulsion, he's had this forward momentum, he's had all these adventures, and of course, some of them are horrifying and scary, but at least he's been preoccupied with his quest of getting home or getting his men home, whereas she's just waiting. She's just waiting around, and her life has stymied. And so I love that we get her reaction to this, and I love that we get her perspective and the visuals of that. I think it's great. And it just adds to the melancholy and the bittersweet nature of this film.
Yeah, for sure. And I very much empathize with that criticism. I've seen that before, and I think it's an apt criticism. Perhaps Nolan refrains from leaning into female characters as the lead because it's not his strength. I don't know. I pose that as a question, not as an excuse. I really
that's
don't
fair.
know.
Yeah, no, that is fair.
To my knowledge, I don't even know if anyone has ever asked him that. Maybe he has, and I'm just ignorant to the answer. I have no idea. But maybe that's why he leans into these male characters more so than the female characters. I do think there have been some compelling female characters in his movies, but generally they do take a bit of a backseat. I don't disagree with that criticism, broadly speaking. With the Odyssey, it's interesting, right? Because yes, so much of it is about Odysseus and his arc, which we've talked about. The Anne Hathaway character of Penelope, I agree. Those scenes that she has with her son and the way she talks about politics and the way she actually ends up having a bit of bite in those verbal exchanges with her son, despite showing tender love to him throughout as well. She obviously cares about his well-being, but when it comes to politics and knowing what's right for the throne, she knows more than anyone else. And she's not afraid to be adamant with her son when she needs to be. And I think Anne Hathaway taps into that really well in her performance. And the other thing too, I don't know if this was purposeful on Nolan's part, perhaps actively trying to remedy that criticism and being aware of it. I don't know. But the female characters of this film are so fascinating to me, even though they might have limited screen time comparatively, but they're arguably more memorable, such as Penelope. But we talked about Cersei earlier. Maybe 5 minutes of screen time, but you will not forget what Samantha Morton is doing in this film.
Burned on your brain.
Absolutely. And even though it's been polarizing, Lupita Nyong'o in a dual role here, that is also excellent given the limited screen time. She, of course, playing Helen of Troy. the controversy around that is so funny to me because Helen has maybe 45 seconds of screen time in this film. We're losing our minds over 45 seconds of a 3-hour movie, by the way. This is nearly 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that character is on screen for less than 3 minutes.
That
Now,
fictitious character.
a fictitious character, by the way.
What are we
Yes.
doing?
Absolutely insane. Now, she also plays the sister, and I have no idea how to pronounce the name. Clytemnestra?
Oh, Clytemnestra, yeah, which
Yeah.
is probably wrong too, since
Yeah,
I
I have
said
no idea.
Telemachus wrong for the longest
Yes.
time.
And that character has even less screen time than Helen.
Yes. Like 5 seconds.
Yes. But potent. Absolutely potent. Both of those scenes,
Absolutely.
both of those shots are incredible. So I do really love what Lupita Nyong'o brings to this film. And Nolan cast her maybe knowing that it was going to be controversial in today's political climate. I don't know. Or maybe he didn't know and just didn't care. Either way, I find it inspired casting. Charlize Theron, I think, is phenomenal as Calypso. Again, limited
Absolutely.
screen time, but what she provides to this film, I think, is really quite fascinating. So, like, I do really love the what he's doing here with the female characters. As far and few in between as they might be, yes, there's a lot of masculinity going on here, and a stripping of that as well,
Yes.
a deconstruction of it, as you noted earlier.
Yep.
But I do love how the female characters of this film leave a lasting impression.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned Calypso and Charlize Theron's performance because Calypso is such it could have been a very different performance. It could have been a very different depiction where, you know, she's a seductress and she's, you know, ensnared him and kind of feeding into that trope of, you know, women as manipulators. And I love that it's just like, no, she was there to rescue him, to help him. And yes, of course, she did kind of trap him for 7 years, but it was in name of benevolence and trying to heal him, trying to help him. And, you know, of course we can argue whether or not that was selfish or whether or not she should have been more honest with him. Of course we can. But I love that complexity. And I love that she doesn't have a lot of screen time. But again, you're right. Like you said, all of these women characters and all of these actresses, they make the most of their moment. And they really do flesh out these characters in such a short amount of time. And they give them complexity in such a short amount of time too, which is just fascinating and great. So I love that. And I think you have a great point that they are so memorable. And in some cases, the most memorable.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic. I think it's also a really interesting, it's a really interesting point that you brought up as far as perhaps Christopher Nolan shies away from having women as protagonists because maybe because he doesn't feel equipped or that it's, you know, maybe he wants to talk about more what his perspective is as a man. So he's going to have that. So I think that's an interesting point. So, but anyway, regardless, I do think it's interesting, and I do think that the women make the most of it, and I do love that they are transcending tropes that could have been very easily filled, and they're more complex, giving great complex performances.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do love how they come across here. Same thing with Zendaya as Athena, limited screen time, but there's a tender nature to the character that I do really love, and given the context that comes later, as far as Odysseus' perspective of what happens in Troy. And as you noted earlier, it is very different from the iteration we get at the midway point of the film when we first see the Trojan horse coming into Troy. Odysseus' perspective of it is much more haunting. And when he sees Athena, the statue of Athena, being decapitated, it affects him. It really does. It's almost as if he needed to win the war because that's what he was tasked to do. But once he achieved that, he immediately regretted it.
Yes.
And the way Nolan symbolizes that with Zendaya on screen makes it all the more visceral and daunting for sure. And how that comes back later on in the film or near the end, as I noted earlier, when he's having that moment with Penelope and they reach out and grab hands, it really does bring this laconic but really potent perspective as to this emptiness that Odysseus is feeling. And it makes sense as to why he's been gone for all this time.
Yes.
And that clearly has a big effect on Penelope for all the reasons we noted earlier. And the other thing, too, speaking of casting, and we noted this a little bit earlier in our opening thoughts, but also the casting of Elliot Page here is phenomenal because I don't know how many other filmmakers are going out of their way to cast Elliot Page because of the dumb politics that our current world lives in. It feels like most major studios are staying away, and Nolan just doesn't give a shit. And not only cast him in that role, but then gives him this really pivotal moment at the midway point of the film that is striking. I love the griminess of it, the aesthetic of Sinon. Is that the character's name?
I think that's
don't
the
know how to
name.
pronounce
Yeah.
it. I don't know how to pronounce any of
I think
these
you're
names.
right. You're good.
But the aesthetic of it and how grimy and dirty and deathly the character comes off, that Page taps into impeccably in his performance. I love it. It was really striking. That was easily one of my favorite moments of the film as well. And Nolan and his team, who's ever the one making these choices, I guess kudos, because the bar is on the floor. And it's unfortunate that, it comes to things like this, but I thought that was inspired casting as well. And it feels like most of the major studios are staying away. And I hate that because I think Page is a really great actor.
He is.
And he proves it once again in this film for sure.
Yeah, no, I love Elliot Page and I'm always excited to see him. And you're absolutely right. And he's great here and he should be in more things because he's an incredible actor. And I love that he and Christopher Nolan are working together again. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's such a great emotional scene. I just want to say, speaking about Zendaya as Athena, something that I thought of while you were talking about that really struck me is that Athena is, yes, she's the goddess of wisdom, but she's also a warrior goddess. But we don't see that side of her here. She is more a specter who's haunting Odysseus. And yes, she's providing bits of sage wisdom, haha, of course. But she's very much haunting him. And I love what her role and her purpose serves.
I agree.
To remind him of what he has lost and what the part of his humanity and dignity and respect and all of that has just been shredded. And I love that she is a visceral and visual reminder for him and just follows him in his shame and haunts. I love that. I think it's great.
Especially because one of the biggest moral frameworks here is around this idea of hospitality and welcoming in strangers, which is pivotal to the Odysseus character prior to the war. And the film explicitly lays that out before he leaves, in those scenes before he goes to the war, but even when he's gone and his son is there trying to maintain that same ethos, which Nolan demonstrates a few different times as well. That's a big part of it. And that's, again, going back to that code. And even though they're at war and they scheme this plan to get into Troy, when it starts to cross those boundaries of who you are and you start to lose those pieces of yourself by rebelling against the gods, I guess, or rebelling against this moral framework that you've established for yourself. That's one of the best moments of Matt Damon's performance here, when he's revealing this to Penelope, that specific haunting quality that he notes in that monologue of, this was a gift. I hate that this is how, like, it had to come to this. Like, he knew that it would work, or likely it would work, and he hated every second of it. He did not like that that's what it took. There's just something sacred about giving this gift to the gods and to strangers, the people of Troy that he does not know, and using that to exploit those people to win the war. How that eats the character, and it comes through in Damon's performance very well. Yeah, I think it's fascinating, and it gives credence to those elements of Athena that you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what's fascinating is he knows all that, and yet he does it anyway.
He
still does it, still plows ahead, and it eats him up from the inside out. And that's the price he pays. And, it's funny because I've been kind of struggling. The one facet of the film I've been struggling with was Matt Damon the correct casting? And because I personally have never really been a Matt Damon fan as an actor. I think he's fine. I feel that he's always playing himself, but himself in quotes is, even if he's playing the same character, that's not necessarily himself. That's the persona, the character he's crafted that we've seen multiple times. However, as we're talking, and as specifically you're talking about his guilt, his shame, and that conversation he's having with Penelope about the gift of the Trojan horse and violating that contract, his kind of world-weary nonchalance, in a way, I think actually works in favor of Odysseus. So perhaps he was the perfect casting. So I don't know. I think I'm coming around on his casting and his performance as we're talking about this, which is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a Matt Damon fan. I do agree with you.
That.
I don't think he has the range of the best actors of all time. But I think he's very good at crafting a character, giving the character some sort of emotional or comedic nucleus that he's able to mold and shift as it goes, even if it's within a certain frequency that he's comfortable with. I do think he's very good at still molding it into a way that works for the movies. And I think he does that here very well. And again, maybe it's because he's done action spectacle before. He's able to give that a lot of credence. He's able to provide this leadership quality to Odysseus that makes sense for the character. But more importantly, where Matt Damon thrives the most here is that emotional underbelly. If that doesn't work, the film falters, because that's ultimately what it's all about, obviously. Yep. And Nolan pauses this film dozens of times to emphasize that. So if Damon can't make that work, then you don't have a movie. It flatlines pretty quickly, but I think he's more than capable of giving that credence and giving the character a pathos to the point where when he comes in at the end and that action is unfolding, our audience was actively cheering.
Oh, mine too.
They were very into it. They were very into it. And I think I think that's warranted. I understand that visceral response when you're in the theater watching it because of Nolan's storytelling, to be fair to Nolan as a director, but also Matt Damon's performance and that weariness, that longing, that desire to get home, that murkiness that he's experiencing when he's with Calypso, and then those moments he has with Telemachus when they meet up.
Yes.
And even though he introduces himself as a beggar, like that whole escape sequence is riveting. So yeah, I mean, Damon makes it work aesthetically. action wise, I had no reservations. For me, it all came down to, can he make that emotional underbelly work? And generally speaking, I didn't have any sort of hesitation that he wouldn't be able to. But to be fair to him, in a vacuum, as we're talking about this movie singularly, yeah, he's really good here. My only, I don't want to say reservation. The only performance here where I feel indifferent about, I guess, is Tom Holland. And I know that generally from the reviews that I've read, he's the one getting the most heat. Now, I don't know how much of that is warranted as far as major criticism goes. I think it's fine.
Yeah, same.
Where with Tom Holland, I somewhat draw a line in the sand here. For all of the screen time that he has in this film, there are only 2 moments where it really matters. And that's the moment when he recognizes who the beggar actually is, and that moment with John Bernthal. When he responds to the stories about his father, he slays both of those moments.
Yeah.
So yes, he might be middling, he might be fine the rest of the movie. You can even say he's bad. I won't go that far. I don't think he's bad. Maybe he's clearly out of his league a little bit when he's working with all of these other spectacular actors who are able to go above his threshold. I can understand that. I think that is perfectly fair. But when it matters, he comes to play.
Yeah.
He nails both of them. And I think that more than makes up for everything else. And that's what makes his performance ultimately serviceable. And it helps the film land when it needs to.
I agree with you. I do think that he's probably the weakest amongst this. Maybe, I don't know. I was going to say maybe John Bernthal too. Not that I think he's a weak actor, but maybe here. But at the same time, he's kind of swaggering, and that is what you need for that character. So I guess it works, and I guess he's doing a good job. But
just to speak to Bernthal real fast before you go on to Tom Holland.
Sure.
The way you describe Damon is kind of how I feel about Bernthal, but I'll say this.
That's fair.
I love the Bernthal one-trick pony, though.
Yeah,
Like,
it works.
I love that. he can just do the Punisher the rest of his career, and I'm totally fine with it. Totally fine with it.
Yeah,
I love Bernthal as Punisher. So, and he was filming this. If Holland's, I guess, story on this is to be taken at face value, they were getting ready to film this and had to pause Spider-Man to do this movie. So they went both of them went from the Odyssey right into Spider-Man. So he might have also been in Punisher mode while doing this, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean,
but
every single role I've ever seen him in, whether it's Wind River, whether it's The Bear, whether it's Walking Dead, whether it's this, he is swaggering, it's kind of his thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. I do
it's
kind of love
one note, but man, he's very good at the one note.
Yeah,
Really
totally.
good.
I do love, and it's funny talking about Matt Damon and how I think he's kind of one note, and his one note doesn't totally work for me, but for John Bernthal, it often does. I do think it's funny though talking about Spider-Man because you have John Bernthal, you have Tom Holland, and you have Zendaya too, and they're all in this.
Exactly.
I think that's so funny. What was I talking about before?
Holland.
Oh, Tom Holland. Yes,
yeah, I
yes.
stole your thunder. You
That
mentioned
is
Bernthal.
okay.
I had to bring that up.
No, but that was good. That was a good point. I love that you did. So Tom Holland, I think he's an interesting one because I haven't loved most of his career, like most of his choices or most of his acting performances, but when he is good, he's great. And I think you nailed it because the other scenes, I agree. I think he's fine, and fine in the sense of he's doing a serviceable job. It's not bad. It's not really great. It's not egregious where it's detracting from anyone else, but it's also not standing out. It's not, his performance is not fully captivating or riveting to me. But I think what Tom Holland does so well is when he is playing into innocence and into heartbreak. I think those when there's a tenderness required, and you are absolutely right that those two scenes are when tenderness are required, and so he fully commits and it works. So I very much agree with you on that. That the rest of the performance, sure, not a great performance, or it's not great in comparison to these utterly stacked cast, but but I think the tenderness definitely comes out when it needs to, which is great.
And honestly, I feel like that's his biggest strength when I look back at his career. And maybe it's unfair because he comes out of the gate with one of the strongest child performances of the century.
Yeah.
What he does in The Impossible is truly impossible. It's unreal. He's genuinely very, very good in that film. I think as a voice actor, he's incredible in Locke as well. Playing
I have to see that.
child of the Tom Hardy character. Now, it's a limited role and it's a voice role, but given the circumstances of that film and the ambiguity around what his father is doing, to tap into that childlike innocence and curiosity, he's really good there. So, and I think about him in The Lost City of Z and the pathos of that movie and how he's able to navigate that very well. So I do think there's something there with Holland when it comes to the emotional side of acting that he's very, very good at. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the dramatic conflict side, it's a bit of take it or leave it. Yeah. And there might be a limitation there that he just can't really break through, I guess, which is what makes him perfect for Peter Parker.
Yes.
Because there's not a ton of dramatic heftiness with that character. It's fun and quippy, and there's some emotion to it, which again, he's very good at.
Yeah.
So he works impeccably under those confines. But this is a character and a role that is asking him to do both. And maybe as a result, some of that dramatic sparring that he has with other characters, it's more flaccid than some of the other performances that we see.
For sure.
Again, I won't go as far as to say it's bad, but
no,
it is a little more muted comparatively. I don't disagree with the criticisms there, but also with all of that said, who cares? I really don't care, because when he's called upon, when those two moments come, that's where this character and the arc of it matters with those two moments. And I think he nailed both of them. Absolutely. And so for me, he services the character.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think what's really interesting is that the moments where, like you said, he's sparring, where he's arguing with the suitors or he's arguing with his mother, and his anger, his rage, they don't feel believable. They feel forced. But I think that actually strangely works for that character, because he's not ready to lead. He's not ready, at least at those moments. He's not ready to lead. He's not ready to assert himself. And so in a weird way, the fact that that performance feels kind of forced in those dramatic moments, it kind of weirdly works for that character.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the intention, but it does work.
So either Nolan is a genius or like, hey, Tom, what are you doing?
Yeah, right.
Maybe you're not as good as everybody else. I'm not going to say that to your face, but I kind of need your limitations here.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. And unless it really is an active choice that he's making.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Don't know if I can buy that, though, given the other performances we've seen from him.
Yeah.
I think that's just Nolan taking advantage of those limitations for this character, because I agree with you. I totally that does work for the character.
Yes.
Very much there with you as well.
But that's what a good director does, is work within the limitations of the budget of makes it work. Makes it work. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. And I want to say this as well. this is one of the funniest things Nolan has ever done. And I love the irony that it comes in something like the Odyssey. Because the character of Agamemnon, I don't know how to say that character's name, but he's the commander of the Archaeans, right? And we see him constantly throughout this film, or at least on occasion when we get to the battle sequences. And to Sam's point, it is Nolan, I feel like, going above and beyond to give the character this incredibly badass aesthetic.
Yes.
So he
Larger
has an
than life.
armor that no one else does, right? He
Yep.
stands apart from everybody else. He is the commander. And it is intimidating. There's this machismo to it. It's just oozes bravado. And I love that underneath that is Benny Safdie.
My God.
There's something about that visual that just I find incredible. And I love Benny Safdie. But when you look at Benny Safdie, he doesn't scream Archean general.
Badass.
Yeah, badass. Like he's kind of like a fun goofball. And I say that very complimentary, by the way. Very complimentary. I love Benny Safdie. But that juxtaposition I just find incredible. And maybe that's why Nolan didn't show his face. He purposefully did not show us Benny Safdie's face. We only see him from behind. So I again, I don't know what went into that choice, but I laughed at it. I thought it was really great.
Yeah, I think it also, strangely, or maybe not strangely, but it also speaks again to this thread of myth making and storytelling. Because again, so often when you are introduced to a character, and a character that's going to be mythic figure or epic in scope, you know, you see them from behind and their face is kind of shielded, or you start with their feet and then the camera, you know, pans up. And so it does build this mystery, this aura about who is the actor playing this character, who is this person behind this helmet that's like a mask. And so I think, again, that feeds into the story, as well as also feeding into the themes of, you know, masculinity and deconstructing that and all of these elements. It's just, there's all these little pieces. And, you know, Christopher Nolan loves a puzzle, loves, you know, piecing pieces together. And I love how that's just yet again another element that reifies these themes.
For sure. And all joking aside, removing that fun little irony, the character is quite fascinating, right? Because we do learn a little bit about him in the sense of the sacrifices that he's willing to make, and it ultimately becomes his demise, which is an interesting little reveal. But as it relates to Odysseus, who finds the idea of having those kinds of sacrifices a little absurd, because again, he is quite rebellious against the gods, even if there is a respect, I guess, or perhaps a reverence as it relates to treating strangers with respect and kindness, going back to that idea. And that's why he has the relationship with Athena that he does, even if all of the other gods that he comes across, it's a bit of me against you kind of ethos. And so that I do find interesting, especially given that what we learn about Agamemnon, I don't know how to say the character's name, but that is told to us not from Odysseus's perspective, but through this grander idea of myth telling. And I love that as a storytelling trope here because of the meta-ness of it. The Odyssey started off as an oral tale, and it probably changed God knows how many times before
Of course.
it was written down, which is so fascinating that that's somewhat what Nolan does here to tell this story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
and
brilliant stuff. I'm a fan.
And And there are so many different moments of storytelling within this film too, like so many different perspectives. The film opens with, the story of Odysseus and someone orating, and then we get it at the end too. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I love kind of turning the camera inward on arguably the most famous story, the oldest or one of the oldest stories, to critique storytelling and who has that power and who are the heroes of the story and who are the stories told about and who gets to tell the story. Barry Hamilton, who tells your story. I very much love that. I love it. I think it's great.
I do as well. Do you have any other final thoughts before we get out of here? I know we're going kind of long here.
I mean, there's so much to dig into with it, so it makes sense that we went long. I mean, I just have to say something that you had said a little bit earlier about the reaction towards the battle scene, the climactic battle scene near the end of the film, and how the reaction of your crowd. It in a way didn't surprise me, but in another way, it very much blew my mind, and my little nerd heart was very full and overflowing that people are losing their minds at a Greek myth story that's like 3,000 years old.
I know.
And I was like, and that they're cheering and so invested, and it's like, this movie is 3 hours and it's getting, it was late at night. I loved it. I thought that was great. I loved that it was such a
Homer
great
would be
reaction.
Proud.
Yes.
I loved it.
Homer would be very proud. But yeah, no, I was really excited for this, and I love the choices that were made in this film, the visuals, the acting, the perspective shifting, the unreliable narrators. I think it's great.
No,
I really loved this.
That is a really great point, because we went pretty hard on the main show this last week on the new live action Moana.
Yes.
And it's clear that people are getting tired of cheap, lazy filmmaking, regardless of how big the budgets are, because it's not just the critics this time around. General audiences are repulsed and saying no to that movie. And it's something we've seen from time to time, maybe not enough, over the course of the last few years, and it's becoming a talking point as far as how bad these summer spectacle movies look these days. To the point where last week, Transformers, Michael Bay's Transformers of all movies, was getting a revisionist moment. I could not believe my eyes. It was unreal. And of course, Pirates became a big part of the conversation as well. And I bring that up to say this. The Odyssey, to your point, is a tale as old as time. The story to begin stories. It has been recounted over and over and over again. And yet, here we are in the year of our Lord 2026 with another adaptation, and people are in the cinemas having the time of their lives. Emotionally invested, feeling the dramatic tension of the movie. So what that screams to me is, it doesn't matter if it's a remake. It doesn't matter if it's another adaptation. If you make a good movie, they will go. They will respond. I don't know why Hollywood is actively recoiling at that idea. It kind of drives me crazy, but I also find that fascinating.
Yep.
Now, some of it is the Christopher Nolan of it all, but ultimately this is another adaptation of a story that we all know, that we've all experienced to some degree or another. There's no other story that's been more influential than the Odyssey. It is the grandest of tales, and yet people are floored by this movie. At least my audience was, as if they've never seen or heard this before in their lives. They were invested.
There is something though that, and I don't know if it's the 70 millimeter of it, the IMAX of it, the Christopher Nolan of it, the Hoyte van Hoytema cinematography of it. I don't know, but there is something that, I joked earlier about we're so back, but there is something that feels like a hearkening back to cinema of yore while also feeling fresh and innovative, which feels wild to say about a story that is a couple thousand years old.
Yeah. But again, you make good movies.
Yeah.
If the quality is there, the people will react.
Yes.
They will respond. Who would have thought? God. I hope the studios are paying attention. My last thought on this, I will reiterate exactly what you said. The score, the cinematography, the craft, as always, is out of bounds. And I find Nolan so fascinating as a figure himself that is almost mythical in a sense, because there is poetry to his arc as a storyteller, which is another reason I find him to be a fascinating choice to tell this story. Because when you look back at his movies, yes, there is an obsession with time. There is an obsession with examining his central protagonist and really digging into them in this introspective way. And specifically, what's interesting about that is they're all getting back to something. In Memento, we're getting back to the truth. The Prestige is, we're getting back to obsession or the impossibility of escaping it. Inception, we're getting back to our children, as I noted very passionately on the main show this last week. Dunkirk, we're getting back to England. Interstellar, we're getting back to our family. Oppenheimer, we're getting back to our own consciousness. And here, the Odyssey is not only about getting back home, but as we talked about, rediscovering what home actually means. And I find that thematic through line, whether that's intentional or not, I think it is.
I think so too.
Just such a interesting thing to parse through. Like his filmography and the way he philosophizes, how he sees the world, I'm endlessly captivated by. And I love it. I'm a big fan. Anyway, that is the Odyssey. If you agree or disagree with our thoughts, you can leave a comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, that is. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can always reach out to us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can always email us insessionfilm@gmail.com. All right, we will have another review this week. We are talking about The Invite, Olivia Wilde's new film. I look forward to digging into that one as well. That one should come out tomorrow as this episode is released. And as we've alluded to a few times, the main show this week, episode 696, we talk about our favorite Nolan scenes. Maybe we'll have to revisit that top 5 to begin next week's show to see if anything from the Odyssey would crack our list. Maybe we'll do that. But that was a really fun top 5. I urge people to go and check that out. And we not only talk about Nolan, we get into the modern state of cinema again, because Moana inspired some thoughts. So go and check all of that out. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.